My friends, hey, we're going to shake it up a little bit here today, and I asked Trish Judge to bring on an end user of HP products, and she reached out to a gentleman named Joe Kripli, and Joe wrote a really nice article, stuck it out there on LinkedIn, about his absolute frustration and aggravation around HP's nonsense, pushing out these firmwares and causing people all kinds of problems. And the way Joe articulated this, well, folks, there's a whole lot of people all over the world feeling the same way. But Joe's not in our industry. Joe's in other industries. He's in the remanufacturing industry around transportation. I thought it'd be a great conversation. Trish and Joe, welcome to the End of the Day with Ray.
Hi, Ray. Hi, Joe.
Hello, Tricia. Hello, Ray. Thank you for having us.
You know, Joe, I read this article and I had to laugh, but, I hate to laugh because it is a serious problem, but HP is so egregious of what they're doing, and you really articulated it well. But tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing and your background and your vocation, because it is different from the imaging channel, but there's some similarities that I think the audience will appreciate.
Oh, very much so. I'm currently the president of the Automotive Parts Remanufacturers Association. Okay. So we go by the acronym APRA. We've been around for 80 years, a little bit over 80 years, since 1941. And the reason we were formed was because of World War II. You couldn't find automotive parts. All the OEMs, the Ford, Chryslers, GMs were all converted to the war machine, making airplanes, Jeeps, tanks, what have you. And you couldn't find a starter, alternator, water pump, what have you. So everyone had to start rebuilding and repairing them. And that's kind of where our roots are from. Fast forward to today, and interesting enough, even on the automotive OEMs, only 2% of all the automotive products produced are remanufactured.
Wow.
Which in my mind is an absolute crime. Mm-hmm. I mean, why are we not at 10% at least? I mean, the environmental savings, just reaching 10% would be enormous for the environment and the economy.
Well, it is crazy. And I think, Trish, in our industry, where do we sit? About 25%?
Yeah, we did at one point reach 30%. And in some of the legacy models, we actually hit 50%. But those days are gone. I mean, wow. The OEMs have done a good job of beating us up.
Well, there's some things taking place right now, and I'm going to ask you, Joe. Are you seeing any impacts with the right to repair, mandate that came down? It was an executive order. Has that helped your industry at all?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the fact that the government recently realized that they should be using remanufacturing on some of their federal government vehicles, which they never did before. Mm-hmm. Again, as a cost save. We always say remanufactured products or parts are as good as new. And the reason we say that, people always say, how can it be as good as new? You're using the old product. But we're building it to the current specifications, and we're repairing what broke. Mm-hmm. So it's better. The reason it broke, we realized why it broke. It was either a weld or a circuit or what have you. And we've upgraded that and repaired that. So it's really a better product, and we give it the OE warranty when it goes out the door.
Well, at the end of the day, and a lot of these parts just generally wear out. There's nothing wrong with remanufacturing. It's kind of nutty. But I was surprised that you're telling me it's that lower percentage, less than 10%. That's pretty amazing.
I couldn't believe it. The United States International Trade Commission did a study back in 2012, and that's what it came back with, was that just 2% of the components in the automotive parts world are remanufactured. And it's stunning. It really is. Yeah, now, some are higher than others. Everyone has reman calipers. That seems to be standard, maybe a reman transmission. But recently, we used to remanufacture water pumps. Mm-hmm. We don't. Why? Because they're so cheap from China. So you don't have to. And then all of a sudden, come COVID, you couldn't get any from China. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not like you can turn remanufacturing back on in an instant. It doesn't happen. You got to set up a line, do all the ISO qualifications in that. And so it's not easy to, bring it back to the U.S.
Well, I think politics are going to play a big role in going forward, not only in the auto industry, but in our industry as well. I mean, it's just a reality of life. And the crisis that we see the world in today, and remanufacturing will probably have a surge. We'll probably see a whole lot more right to repair laws come into effect. And, your industry is really just like ours. If I think about the automotive industry itself, we're switching from a combustible engine to an electrical vehicle, a whole lot less parts, a whole lot less repairs, a whole lot less need for the dealership or the service department. We look inside the print channel, and we're seeing the same things. OEMs making machines with fewer less parts, and obviously with the volumes of the device themselves going down. So this is going to be an interesting opportunity over the next, I think we got a decade to see where we go and how it all ramps up. But what do you hear from the auto industry that we could kind of relate to our print industry?
Well, with the right to repair, the issue we're having is, the big question is, when you buy a vehicle, do you own the software? It's just like the HP printer behind me. When I buy this printer, I figured I own the whole thing. And I bought the license, if you will, for the electronics, for the software, because I bought the whole unit. I should be able to repair my own unit. If it needs a new door, it needs a new cartridge, I replace the cartridges, right? HP doesn't come out and replace the cartridge for me. I do that. So why can't I upgrade the software myself, or why can't I control it? What if I sell that? If I sell that, doesn't that license go to the next person?
You would
if
think.
I sell a car, doesn't the software on the car go to the next person? I certainly don't own it. It's transferable, if you will.
You would think. And they make it stickier and stickier. And I know you got burned on the firmware. So they pushed out a firmware, and it caused your tell us that little story, because you did it so well, and it doesn't hurt to hear it again.
Well, it was classic because it's 4:30 in the afternoon. My UPS store closes at 6. I'm trying to send a package. I've got to print the label, and I go to print the label, and it says, I'm out of black ink. I'm like, okay, no problem. I've got another cartridge. And so I pull out my other cartridge, which is a remanufactured cartridge, because after talking to Tricia,
sure,
I'm preaching the remanufacturer. And Tricia's like, well, you better be using remanufactured cartridges. I'm like, you're right. I better do it. I ordered them. I've got them. So I put it in, and it says it doesn't recognize it, cannot communicate with the printer. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I pull that back out, and in my stack of cartridges at the bottom, right, I bought these cartridges over the years, right? I've got a genuine HP cartridge. I'm like, well, there you go. I'll fool this thing, no problem. I'm good for my UPS shipment. I take the genuine cartridge, I put it in. It says, your genuine HP cartridge is too old for this unit.
Wow, so I've never even heard of that before. That's just crazy. So not only do they not want you to use a remanufactured, if it's too old, it's no good.
You can't use the OE.
Yeah, this is just, these people are nuts.
And Joe, didn't you bought that printer specifically so that you could use those cartridges that you had stored up in it?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I had an 86. This one's a 7740. I had an 8610, I think it was, and it uses that 952 cartridge. So I'm like, hey, I've got my box of cartridges, and as we all know, the printer you can buy for a couple $100. The cartridges, each set from HP, is $100, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I want to stay with that as a cost save. So I buy this one. And
that's so crazy.
The genuine cartridges didn't work.
So the genuine cartridges have a time limit, a date. They expire like the gallon of milk in the refrigerator, I guess. And then on top of that, they push out firmwares and fake you out about security, and they have the security, terrible, terrible stuff. Well, we know that who's the worst one in the OEMs of the auto industry, or in the heavy machinery that you're aware of? I mean, in our industry, it's HP. They're definitely the biggest and the most egregious. What about?
Yeah, it's probably. I think GM is the one that's really taking the steps towards trying to control that software and that, especially when they're trying to download through the dealerships and that. You've got to bring the vehicle back to the dealership. A perfect example is transmissions. Our transmission remanufacturers, and these are big guys. These guys are doing 100,000 transmissions a year, remanufacturing them. They can't test the unit though on their dyno, because GM won't give them the software to test it with. So now they rebuild the whole transmission. They hope it's right, sell it to you. The installer, the garage, puts it in the vehicle. If it doesn't work, it's got to come back out, go all the way back to remanufacturer. If they would just share that data, and Ray, I'm not talking. I don't need to know the data from a 2020 vehicle, a 2019 vehicle. I'm talking, can you at least share with me 10-year-old vehicles.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
But they're the ones that need a remanufactured transmission.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it's a new vehicle, they're going to get a warranty transmission. Hopefully.
That's right. That's right. I got 5 years of owning that.
Yeah,
5 years.
That is. Oh,
that's all theirs.
That's pretty crazy stuff. Pretty crazy stuff. Trish, is there any more news about our good friends at HP? You know, I was looking at their sales. Their print sales are down $800 million since 2018. And I'm thinking to myself, the more and more they get pressure, and you know, their compute business is all about notebooks. There's really no aftermarket there. That's their only growth. They bought back billions of dollars worth of their own stock. But go ahead.
As you pointed out too, this Amplify program where they're touting their incredible environmental commitment, it's a fraud.
Yeah, I put the bullshit meter on that one.
It does not help the environment in any way. Using a remanufactured cartridge helps in an obvious way.
Yep.
And this, poor Joe's got to throw out 4 or 5 cartridges now. Yep. What a waste.
And one of them's an OEM cartridge.
One of them's an OEM.
Wow, that's just crazy.
This is so bad for the environment, and they're greenwashing and sucker punching the consumers. And then you look at their sales reports and they claim they're glowing. I don't see them as glowing.
No, they're not glowing. And the more pressure they get, the more outrageous they're probably going to be. And I don't know why dealers even get in bed with them. And, in the auto industry, Joe, maybe one day we could get someone that's actually one of the remanufacturers to join you on the show, because there's a lot of similarities. I think that'd be kind of cool. And,
absolutely. You made me think when you asked me who was the worst out there, and I did think of a situation, Nissan. So on your transmission, there's a transmission control module. Uh-huh. And to buy that from Nissan, so I can't even go to a NAP or anybody. I have to buy it from Nissan because they program it with the VIN number of the vehicle.
Wow.
So think about that. I can't even go to a junkyard. I can't. If I had 2 of those cars, I couldn't take one off of one and put it on the other. I mean, I am locked in. I have to go with my VIN number to the OEM to get that transmission.
Joe, you just opened up a big old can of worms. And I don't know if you're thinking what I'm thinking, Trish, but, this Amplify thing is all about data. It's all about data. And I keep telling people, don't assume that HP or maybe the big distributor TD Synnex is going to use data in a certain way. Try to imagine how they could use it. And what you just explained could easily be something that we could be looking into the print space. Once you get all the data, then how do you manipulate that data or use that data to your advantage? And Nissan sure as hell figured it out. I guess I'll never have Nissan or GM or HP as a sponsor on the end of the day with Ray. Hey, it was great having you all on. I think it's great when we hear an end user story, and you brought to light the fact that they're even locking out OEM HP cartridges. Totally insane. But if we don't start paying attention to our environment, we don't start paying attention to the Right to Repair Act, which is only going to gain in momentum, we're all missing the boat. Is there anything you want to add before we end?
I just do want you to know my wife was able to drive to Walmart, buy another HP cartridge, come all the way back, and I did make it to UPS.
Well, that's a good. At least you got the end of the story, and Trish didn't get yelled at anymore. What about you, Trish? Anything to add before we end?
No, just please support your ITC members and remanufacturers. And Joe, thank you for sharing your story with me and with Ray, and thank you for being committed to remanufacturing.
Awesome stuff.
Thank you.
Because both of you and me and everybody in the world knows this, status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.